Assalamu alaikum Wanderlusters. I am Sanya Nasser and welcome back to another episode of WanderVision. Today's episode is on tourism being a tool for regeneration rather than destruction. And today we have with us Ms. Amara Saeed, who is the co-founder of Offto Eco-Resorts, and she is also a development sector professional and has a vast experience in this topic, especially climate change and ecotourism. So welcome on the show, Ms. Amara, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sanya. It's my pleasure.
For the audience, could you give us a little bit of a brief introduction of yourself and what you do and what you've been doing the past few years, and especially Offto Eco-Resort?
So I've been in the development sector for about 25 years now. I actually started off in the corporate sector, and I realized very quickly that I was not cut out for the corporate sector. So I moved to the development sector, and my first job was with the International Union for Conservation of Nature on a community-based trophy hunting program. And that's where my journey, so to say, started. Then I never looked back, stayed with the development sector. Offto Resorts was initiated and conceived by my husband and myself, by co-founders. I think it's a passion, started off as a passion project. And it came into being after we visited the north after a gap of about a decade. And that's where it all started. And here we are now. We've got a sustainable resort in Hunza, Karimabad, one coming up in Hosseini, right opposite the Pasukons, and one in Skardu.
Wow. तो अगर इतने ज़्यादा डिफरेंट ब्रांचेस हैं, दैट मीन्स कि टूरिज़्म की डिमांड तो बहुत ज़्यादा है, और इस तरह के रिजॉर्ट्स की डिमांड भी पाकिस्तान में आपके डोमेस्टिक ज़्यादातर ट्रैवलर्स आते हैं या कस्टमर्स होते हैं या आधे इंटरनेशनल एज वेल?
So it depends on the season. Spring or autumn में mostly international tourists, foreign tourists बहुत आते हैं, or summer season it's mostly domestic season. And with COVID, I think those trends have sort of changed because you see a lot of domestic tourism emerging after COVID.
Yeah, that is very true. I think 2020 से पहले when we talked about tourism, it was mostly focused on international travels. अगर किसी local से पूछते थे कि कहाँ जाना है, they would say कि oh हमने बाहर कहीं जाना है. But now I think these trips have started going to up north as well. And focus has, like, people have started discovering these places, which is also one of our frameworks of Truly Pakistan, where we say discover, uncover, and recover. So we discover new places, we uncover the secrets of those places, and then we also work on recovering them. Offto का जो design है, it is eco tourism. What makes the design eco-friendly, and why is it different?
I think before I go into that, it's important to understand why we went into this, why we did this. We had gone to Hunza for the first time about 25 years ago. It was a beautiful place. It still is. And like they say, it was a magical little place with the, the sort of the majestic mountains surrounding it. There's a very positive energy there. The community there, the way they're warm, they're welcoming. And then we kept going back. Then there came a gap of a few years, and we went back, I think, about maybe 8 years ago or so. And it was very heartbreaking to see what had happened. How little buildings and hotels had mushroomed with no regard for the local environment, the way, the tourists were coming in without any consideration for the social or cultural preservation of the area. So we wanted to show people Hunza from our eyes. We wanted them to see it we wanted them to see it the way we saw it and build around it. The biggest, I think, issue with travel to these tourism spots in Pakistan, especially up north, is that the tourism has become extractive. It's not seen as a regenerative process. That's what we wanted to change. So we wanted to bring about a model to show that it is possible to have a business, a resort that is giving back to the community, that's built on sustainable practices. Now that happens all over the world. In Pakistan, there isn't any. any such entity. And there is a difference between ecotourism and sustainable hospitality and tourism. Generally, when you talk about ecotourism or eco hotels or eco resorts, you'll see elements of the environment or natural elements being sort of showcased everywhere. It's more for optical reasons. It doesn't really go deeply into the systemic or the operations or the structure of the organization. You'll see, say, bamboo huts, or you'll say, cane furniture, glass bottles. There's a lot of greenwashing. But when you really dig deeper and you talk about sustainable hospitality and tourism, it has to be in the DNA of the organization. So that's where it all started.
What hit home was you mentioning glass bottles, because there are all these big conferences that we have for climate change.
Yeah.
And we have these glass bottles for the optics, but nobody's really actually making the effort to bring about a change.
Yeah.
And it should be on a subconscious level. When we talk about tourism, there's a thing called social license as well, especially when we talk about domestic travels. Basically, you don't need anything to travel within the country. But the one thing that we should all be mindful of should be of responsible tourism and social tourism as well. People on the supply side and the demand side. When we talk about the supply side, it shouldn't be कि हम फायदा उठा लें उस जगह का कि हम जैसे बाहर से abroad से if any business comes in, अपना सारा कुछ लेकर आते हैं, अपने लोग लेकर आते हैं और फिर फ़ायदा उठा के चले जाते हैं. So we shouldn't become one of those people. We should be the people who benefit the community as well, जो वहाँ पे रहती है. So now if we talk about eco-resorts, what is eco-resorts and why do you call it that, and what makes it different?
So you've said a very interesting thing. कि जब हम जाते हैं सप्लायर साइड पे स्पेशली कि हमने होटल बनाया, रिजॉर्ट पाया, हमने बाहर से लोग लेके आए, बाहर से रिसोर्सेज लेके आए, एंड दैट इज़ एग्जैक्टली what we didn't want to do, that we wanted to go away from. Like I said, it has to be regenerative, not exploitative. In tourism and hospitality industry is looked at as an exploitative industry. And there are many examples of, why it's looked at as an exploitative industry. But like I said, जब आप sustainable hospitality, responsible hospitality की बात करते हैं, आपकी organization की DNA में it has to be built in. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're not just replacing our plastic bottles, or we're not planting a couple of trees, or we're not just, it's not greenwashing, right? It's not कि वो optics के लिए है, वो actually आपकी एक step में है. Starting from when you're doing the land acquisition. So the way we did it was that it's in partnership with the local community. So the model for the land utilization is built with the community, and they receive a return on their land. Not just that, but also they're a part of the planning process. Next comes the planning of the resort. So it's spread out on a large area. It's spread out on about 6 acres in Karimabad, and it's in the middle of these 8 villages. And the people around Offto, they call it the 9th village because it's so owned and so accepted by the community. I think the examples that, it is doable, that's what we need to take forward. When you're talking about, say, land leveling, नेक्स्ट आपका स्टेज आ गया कि आपने प्लानिंग करनी है, आपने लैंड को प्रिपेयर करना है, आपने डिज़ाइंस बनाने हैं. You have to follow the contour of the land, and for that you need indigenous knowledge. So you have to bring in the communities to understand those. The construction has to be construction guidelines that we developed, and we'll talk about those in detail in partnership with the community. So I think what's important is कि जब हम sustainable and responsible tourism or hospitality की बात करें, it's not just the environment, it's the culture, it's the social fabric that we have to be respectful of and protect, and it's livelihoods, it's economic activity as well. So focusing on providing economic opportunities in that area to the people of that particular area. And that's how you defer it from regular hospitality and tourism.
Very rightly said, especially when you talk about economic benefits. It shouldn't be a trickle down effect. It should be they should be actively involved in the जो भी फायदा उस economic activity का मिल रहा है. So there should be a big part of that activity because economic benefit तो बाकी जगहों पे भी होता है. Like when we talk about places like Murray, it's so overpopulated in terms of जब summer vacations पे लोग चले जाते हैं. So people do benefit from that. They do earn, but it's not a very structured way of doing that. वो बहुत side मतलब बाय प्रोडक्ट होता है उसका कि उनको फ़ायदा हो जाता है. We've mentioned greenwashing a few times. For those who might not know what that really means, especially in terms of tourism, could you explain that a little?
Yeah. So greenwashing, especially in terms of tourism, is जब हमने optics के लिए हमने कुछ ऐसी strategies या interventions की हैं अपने होटल में या अपना जो भी resort है जिसमें वो लगे कि ये एक eco tourist या eco friendly property है. Now that could mean, for instance, like I said, glass bottles हमने दे दिए, हमने कोई plants लगा दिए, लेकिन हमने उसके पीछे ये नहीं देखा कि वो पानी जो है वो glass bottles में हम अभी भी क्या bottle डाल रहे हैं, right? हमारा जो waste है वो कहाँ जा रहा है. हमने उसको एक खूबसूरत सी नेचुरल इन्वायरमेंट में बना दिया, बैम्बू चेयर्स रख दिए, लेकिन उस जो इन्वायरमेंट में हमने बनाया है हमारा जो वेस्ट है of the hotel, where is that going? Is that being treated, or are we dumping that into the fields around us? Are we dumping into the water around us? So by greenwashing you mean that you do certain things to give the optics. So it's not the real thing that you're doing, not the feel of, you're just giving the feel of it, or feel of being an eco-friendly resort. Yeah. That's what it means basically.
And also, I think the fact that sustainability doesn't really have an exact definition or one definition, people can use it or manipulate it however they like. Acha, again, if we would want to know or would ask you to walk us through one of the Offto's ecosystems जो कि in place हैं, what would that be? Would it be like greywater reused, or what would you like to explain?
So there's multiple things that I can explain, from our green construction to our water usage to our wastewater treatment. One of the main things that we did was, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Karimabad में बहुत ज़्यादा mineral rich पानी होता है और वो filtered नहीं हो. So the unfiltered water is absolutely black. It's very rich in minerals, but there's also a lot of sedimentation in it, and it causes a lot of kidney problems. So naturally वहाँ पे जो hotels वगैरह हैं, they resort to bottled water. In fact, I've seen many cases where people carry bottled water to wash their faces and brush their teeth कि उनको वो पानी बड़ा ख़राब लगता है. So we brought in, we sort of understood पहले कि वहाँ पे क्या issues हैं. And we brought in 3 consultants from the PCRWR, the Council for Research on Water Resources. One was a glacial water specialist, one was a plant specialist, and one was water filtration consultant. And we brought them in. They studied the, sort of the flow of the water. वहाँ पे obviously the streams, the glacial streams bring the water in. And then sat with the community, figured out, and we built a 3-staged water filtration system, which is, there are 3 tanks. The first tank has water is sprinkled into it, not flown into it at a fast speed. And then it stays there for about a day till the sediment is deposited, and then it's filtered through these bag filters into the second tank. And wahan pe then all the, sort of the second layer of impurities is removed, and then finally into the third one. Each tank has about 60,000 gallons capacity.
Right.
And that water then is, spread through the resort and all the taps and all. And it's checked regularly by PCRWR scientists, and it's potable. It's actually better than any of the bottled mineral water.
Wow.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that we don't use any energy on pumping that water. It's all gravitational, based on gravitational flow. So that was one thing. Our architectural design is another. We used, revived the old age, the old construction methods. We studied them. If you look at some of the forts, the thousands of years old forts like the Baltet fort, it has a certain structure to it which came in from Tibet. There's a couture, it's called couture structure, where you have blocks and it's reinforced by wood. So we studied that, and it's sort of dying out. You don't see any new buildings in that. Now with that, when we studied how it was built, it's built with blocks and it's reinforced with wood, and it has a mixture that is put together to cover the roofs. And it's mostly clay, it's glacial moraine, so it's all local materials. The blocks that we used, we set up a factory. Now you see, these are traditional practices that are dying out. Blocks used to be used in these areas traditionally. So we put up a block making factory. Now, factory doesn't mean that there's machines and there's, dhuan nikal raha hai. It's people, it's labor, all local labor. It's jobs. And so we minimize the use of concrete, only to, of course, make it, very resistant, very minimal concrete, but local materials. So that's another example. And an offspin of that was that the block factories that we set up, those workers have spun off as independent businesses.
Achha, wow.
So the craft factories that we set up for wood, we used only either salvaged wood, which was salvaged from Nagar due to the floods and all. Otherwise, it would have ended up as fuel wood. So we got that, and also green wood. Green wood is trees that are planted specifically for selling, or it's like a cash crop. Wood workshops that we set up, those have also spun off as independent businesses. So that's been the journey. So you're looking at, again, it's not in silos. You have to look at it as one. The environmental aspect, the social aspect, the economic aspect.
All three aspects of sustainability, quite literally.
Exactly.
And then that is also like you're playing a role of a change agent within that community that actually not only does it start a spin off economic development, but it environmentally conscious economic development. I'm just आप सारा कुछ बता रही थी, so I was just wondering कि इसमें carbon emissions reduce भी होते होंगे. उसके लिए आपने कोई किया है कि कार्बन क्रेडिट्स के हवाले से?
So for carbon emissions, एक तो सबसे पहले जो आपके carbon sinks जो create होते हैं is with trees. The way we went about it was कि हमने बहुत minimal trees काटे, हमने नहीं काटे. Trees are, they're beyond just these entities. They represent life, they represent a culture, they represent food security, they represent a lot of things. So we did not cut a lot of, only where it was necessary. Like I said earlier, that we went along the natural contour of the land. Or jahan pe trees, whenever you visit, you'll see that some of our cottages actually have a tree going through the terrace because we built around it. So जो ज़रूरी थे ज़ाहिर है वो हमें काटने पड़े, but we replanted over 2,000 trees.
Random intrusive thought. इसमें कीड़े मकोड़े नहीं आते?
No.
नहीं, अगर ट्री बीच में कॉटेज के अंदर.
So it's in the terrace. It's
Okay.
in the terrace.
And
it goes through the terrace. And we planted loads and loads of additional trees, fruit trees. So कीड़े मकोड़े भी तो आपकी एक जिंदगी है, web of life का, no, but on a serious note, not really, because of course वो अंदर से तो there's, it's not like sustainable resorts or eco-friendly resorts don't give luxury. They give you that luxury of a 5-star hotel as well, but they're just very conscious of their carbon footprint. So going back to your question on carbon emissions, we have installed a 50 kVA solar farm. Now in Hunza, the valley is narrow. So you can't have a very large solar farm because आपको धूप बहुत थोड़ी देर के लिए मिलती है. So you have to look for spots. So we're doing smaller sections of farming. Energy is a big problem. It's the biggest challenge for anybody in the hospitality industry up north. आपके पास 24 घंटों में से 18 घंटे बिजली नहीं है. So you're forced to use generators. But उसको भी आप minimize करना पड़ता है. This is how you minimize it. Solar farms हमने in shorter, smaller spaces कि एक cluster को एक cover करेगा, kitchen and restaurant को दूसरा cover करेगा. And slowly we plan to double that, the solar farm in the next 2 years. The other thing I said was plantation, so massive plantation drives. We've planted over 2,000 trees, and you know that those give you the carbon sinks. The third thing is that the construction reduces your pressure on energy needs. Now, in a place like Hunza, to have air conditioning in hotels, because they're made of concrete, they're high-rise buildings, you have to have air conditioning. It does get warm. The construction practices that we've used, we don't have air conditioning on the resort, and it's very cool. Yeah. Having said that, हमारे लिए सबसे बड़ा challenge with this whole climate change and अभी heat waves ये है कि बहुत short इस साल एक span of heat आया था, and it became very hot. And a lot of people, said कि अच्छा दिन में हमें नहीं है air conditioning. So we have put together alternatives for air conditioning, cooling systems, which keeps the rooms. They're already very cool. रात को तो आपको, it's quite cold. But solutions that reduce your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
That is your contribution. That is how we need. So you have to constantly be coming up with creative solutions that जहाँ तक हो सके हमारा carbon footprint reduce करे.
But you've mentioned many things to say जो carbon footprint कम होता है, emission कम होती है. But have you considered registering at some like Vera या Gold Standard and selling those carbon credits, or is that on the cards?
That's on the cards.
Right.
So there's two things that are on the cards: certifications and carbon credits, carbon offsets.
And maybe registering for the NDCs as well.
Yeah, registering for that, and important हमारे लिए सबसे ज़्यादा है is the certification, because if our the GSTC is our North Star. So a lot of our strategies, our work is aligned with the GSTC, sort of the framework, and then of course the SDG framework as well. So that's important. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, you don't get a lot of guidance on that, or you don't have organizations here that can guide you towards that. But that's something that's on our cards that we're working on.
Yeah. One thing that's been going on in my mind is कि generally जैसे मेरा जितना previous experience रहा है textile industry का या किसी भी इंडस्ट्री का जो होता है, most exporters या most manufacturers वो यही कहते हैं कि sustainable solutions हैं. अब जो है रिसर्च इतनी आ गई कि हम बना सकते हैं, लेकिन वो कमर्शियली वायबल इतना नहीं होता, उसके रिजल्ट्स उतने नहीं होते कि जो आप एक रन ऑफ द मिल चीज़ बना रहे होते हो उसकी वैल्यू पैसे ज़्यादा निकलता है. तो इसमें आपको प्रॉफिट निकलता है जितनी इन्वेस्टमेंट लगी हुई है.
That's a very big. Just before we started this podcast, I was sitting outside and we were having a chat. This is the more difficult path to take.
Yeah,
it's
the road much less walked by.
Yes, it's less walked by. It's more difficult. Having said that, I think हमारा sort of concept है here, that there are two options. ठीक है, या आप charity कर रहे हैं या आप profit बना रहे हैं. So it's important to understand that there's a midway. So by charity, what I mean is giving back to the community. And pure profit means pure, sort of private sector, corporate sector. There is a midway. And that's a social enterprise. And that's what we are. We're a social enterprise. Right. We have to make money because we have to survive. Otherwise, this is not going to survive. Honestly, for this whole thing to be sustainable, for us to be able to give back to community, to be able to provide economic opportunities, to be able to provide this model, we have to survive. But we give back to community in different ways. So this is a very difficult path. It's not easy. A lot of things, like you said, कि जो commercialize करना आसान होती हैं आपको. अब अगर हमने, for instance, हमने food लेना है for our restaurant, तो हम जाके बाजार से simple बात है, जिस रेट पे भी मिल रहा है हम उठा लें. But now we go the extra mile. पहले हम वो देखते हैं कि इर्द गिर्द विलेजेस की जो ख़वातीन हैं, क्योंकि उनको इनिशियली वी प्रोवाइडेड सम सीड्स, सम पोल्ट्री, उनके पास जो एक्स्ट्रा प्रोड्यूस है पहले हम वो लें, सो दैट उनके लिए एक इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी बने. एंड देन द रेस्ट वी कवर बाय जो भी मार्केट से लेना है. लोकल सोर्सिंग, ऑर्गेनिक सोर्सिंग, It's very easy to just go and pick up.
शेल्फ लाइफ भी कम है.
शेल्फ लाइफ भी कम है आपको. एंड देन द इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग इज, जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस हम जब because a culinary experience is a part of the whole experience. So our vision was to provide an immersive experience, let people experience the culture, the environment, become one with nature. Without a culinary experience, that experience is not, it's not complete. So the easier path, the more commercial path was to have very simple food. ये हमारे menu पे available है, जो 10 और hotels पे available. But we did a lot of research on what were the recipes, what were the organic things, the raw material that was used, वो कहाँ से source होता है. ऐसी recipes हैं जो कि die out हो गई हैं, उनको हमने research किया अपनी जो culinary team के साथ है, उस पर बहुत हमने काम किया. उसकी एक ingredient पे क्या इसमें use होगा, and then fusing it with contemporary presentation. So that was a difficult path to take. So you have to train your team. With the entire Offto team, Offto family, they're all local. Employment is 100% local. So आपको hospitality में trained लोग तो फिर भी मिल जाते हैं. आपने यहाँ से उठा लिए वहाँ से. But actually to bring in the youth, 30% of our team is under 30. Almost 80% of our department heads are women. So to bring those in and to break those barriers, that was the difficult part. Bringing them in and sensitizing them to sustainable hospitality. Why can't we just pick up the linen and wash it every 2 hours? So it's a mindset, and that takes time. So yes, it is a more difficult pathway, but I think it's an example of how social enterprises can be successful as well. Responsible business can be successful.
When we talk about all these things, कि हम लोग, for example, कि locally source करने vegetables को या खाने पीने की चीज़ों को, I think एक तो सारा आपका जो 25 years of development sector experience is reflecting in all of that. Because I don't think anyone can so many SDGs all in one go कि आपके ख़वातीन भी काम कर रही हैं, locally source पे young population भी काम कर रही है. And I think one of the fundamental rules of the development sector is participatory approach. कि आपने लोगों को लेके चलना है, don't import solutions. And one size does not fit all. There are different ways of doing the same thing depending on the location, depending on the place, depending on the people. उसमें resistance भी कम आती है. पाकिस्तान में generally एक है थोड़े से change को लेके behavior change थोड़ा सा मुश्किल है लाना, especially towards sustainability in the new age. वैसे तो generally I think जो South Asia बहुत sustainable रहा है अपनी practices में. But अब हम थोड़े से shortcuts ढूंढते हैं, especially in the business sector. So I think ये जो participatory approach होती है कि लोग मुसाज मिल के चलते हैं, उसमें it becomes a little easier. So अभी आपने जब लोगों को hire किया तो वो तो sensitized थोड़े बहुत हो गए and gradually होंगे. जो आपकी the people that come to your resorts and they stay there, do they come because they are environmentally conscious and they want to contribute and experience that, have that experience as well? Or is it just because they saw it, Instagram पे अच्छा लगा, आ जाते हैं?
Both. So we do get a lot of tourists, a lot of people who are evolved tourists, who can appreciate something like this, who want to interact, who want to understand how it works, how the locals live, how they function, the food, who want to experience it all. Yet we get tourists जो कि who come in, एक रात रहा, चले गए. जो awareness की आप बात कर रही थी in guests, that's very important, very, very important. And that's something that we build into our SOPs. That when guests check in, you have to inform them कि हमारी क्या है. एक तो पूरी जो resort है उसका आप उनको give them a brief of what, and then our practices. हमारी सारी जितनी campaigns होती हैं social media की, marketing की, they are focused on the fact that we are a sustainable
That is a USP, right?
That's our USP, absolutely. Guest awareness, tourist awareness is very important. अभी मैं आपको पानी की जो बात कर रही थी, so we monitor, of course, कुछ calculations और पानी usage पे, and you'd be surprised to hear when they do come in, we do talk about water, कि ये shared है और ये हमारी community के साथ shared है, because वो उसके water rights होते हैं. So we follow those water rights, we respect those water rights. But please don't waste water, don't throw your towels, and signage है जगह जगह कि towels ना नीचे फेंके, please try to use them. हमारी जो housekeeping की SOPs हैं वो इसी तरह की हैं. So the foreign tourists that we get will use 120 liters, average 120 liters of total water per day. The Pakistani tourist that we get, can you guess how much they use?
Is it twice as much?
400 liters, over 400
my God.
liters.
Wow.
So that is a challenge. It's the mindset, and we are continuously working on it.
I mean, जो पहली चीज़ मेरे दिमाग में आई है वो ये तो नहीं कि वज़ू पे ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल हो जाता है, या बेसिक माइंडसेट है कि ओ हम ज़्यादा सफाई पसंद है तो ओ रिपीटेड यूज़ है. ये मतलब I really want to justify this somehow. How is
because
that
you've checked into a
possible?
hotel, you're paying for it. Why shouldn't I use hot water?
जैसे AC लगा के छोड़ दो,
AC
बाहर
लगा
जा
के
रहे हैं.
छोड़ दिया, गर्म पानी आ रहा है, बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉपर्टीज़ में वहाँ पे इतना क्लीन, शावर में और टैप्स में तो नहीं आता इतना क्लीन पानी, because of our filtration system, it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
And it's a luxury property. So it's not like it's a low-end property. It's a luxury property. They're comfortable washrooms, good pressure because we followed the gravitational movement of So I think beyond that, ज़्यादा जो है is the mindset.
Sense of responsibility नहीं है.
पानी on किया, गर्म तो छोड़ दिया. नहीं. So what we are going to do, what we are planning to do is कि इसके ऊपर हम on each and every washroom, there should be a marker, a check. At checkout, then we either give a reward or we show them in the bill, this was your usage.
Yeah.
It's a continuous process of awareness raising, and we've committed ourselves to that. So our entire team, if you interact with them, they will tell you about these things. They will walk you through these elements. They will tell you why it's important, because they have ownership. They belong to that area. That's where they're from.
Yes.
So there's complete owner. Without ownership, there can be no long-term accountability, or there can be no, sort of taking interest in responsibility.
Yeah. First, I would like to expand on what you mentioned about the mindsets of the people in our country. I think especially when people go on travel destinations or tours में जाते हैं, so they have this mindset that we've paid for it, so might as well make the most of it, which I have personally seen a lot in people around me as well, and that is something that I would really like to highlight. कि responsible tourism from the demand side as well is very important. अगर आप जा रहे हो तो उस इलाके का ख्याल रखें that you don't litter, that you don't engage in behaviors that might be offensive to the people over there. Do you experience that? Do you witness that कि इस तरह की irresponsible tourism है in terms of the local communities as well?
बहुत है, especially जो आते हैं for a few days into अगर local community की आप बात करें, I think because they have a stake, it's their land, right? And they have to survive there. So I think watch and guard sort of orientation काफ़ी है local communities की, but people who come in from outside the area, उनकी इतनी नहीं है. I think there needs to be mass awareness campaigns. And I was watching these videos the other day. It came across. There was a couple of boys जो Hunza से आगे एक wall के ऊपर they were spray painting their names, and 2 locals stopped them. I don't know if you've seen that. I was like, that's absolutely wonderful. And explained to them very politely, आप क्यों कर रहे हैं? आपको पता है आप हमारी environment खराब कर रहे हैं? इसकी क्या ज़रूरत है? यहाँ पे आपका अपना नाम क्यों लिखा होना चाहिए? Just yesterday I saw something. I think there were some tourists from Australia up in Skardu. And they were saying that, Pakistani tourists need to stop littering. We've been coming here for 20 years and we see, and it was embarrassing. आप बाबू सर टॉप पे जाएं, आपको वहाँ पे डायपर्स बाहर गिरे हुए नज़र आएंगे, you know, chips के पैकेट, फ्रॉस्ट्स के डब्बे. So it's somebody else coming and telling you is embarrassing. So इससे बेहतर है कि हम खुद ही अपने, I mean, this is our environment. Why are we look at what's happened in Swat, look at where we are in Naran. I don't know how we're going to come back from that situation. हमने अभी जो recent floods आ रहे हैं, of course climate change has a lot to do with it, but जब आपने वो natural जो water pathways हैं उनको block कर दिया है, उन पे construction कर दी है illegal, आपने उनको garbage dumps बना दिया है, water is going to look for its course, it's going to claim its course. So it's all about, you know, sensitivity to these issues, and I think education system में हमारे नहीं है ये, that civic sense वो नहीं है.
Which is ironic कि जब हमारे religion में इतना ज़्यादा emphasize किया हुआ है इस चीज़ पे कि it is nisf iman. And I think ये हम I've lost count कि कितनी हमारी podcasts हो गई हैं, but it is so unfortunate कि in every podcast everybody has said कि इन locations में इतनी ज़्यादा littering है, इतनी damage हो चुका है environment को in terms of plastic नीचे गिरा हुआ है, diapers का मैंने इतने लोगों से सुनी है. It's so heartbreaking to hear that. Because गवर्नमेंट भी एक हद तक कर सकती है, सफाई का ख्याल रख सकती है, इंसानों में खुद सेंस ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए कि इंसान गंद नहीं फेंक देते, सिर्फ अपने घर नहीं साफ़ करने होते हैं. When we talk about climate risks, जैसे फ्लड्स हो गए या लैंडस्लाइड्स हो गए, हीट वेव्स आ गए, तो अगर कोई इमरजेंसी रिस्पॉन्स हो, अगर कोई उसको रिएक्ट करना हो, तो वो क्या तरीके होते हैं स्पेशली इन एरियाज़ में जहाँ पे आपके रिजॉर्ट्स हैं?
एक तो आई थिंक इन टर्म्स ऑफ जो आप टूरिज्म हॉस्पिटैलिटी की बात करें, आई थिंक एक स्टेप उससे पीछे ज़रूरी है. सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट जो हम देख रहे हैं ना, जो रिज़ल्ट के इतने सारे यू नो होटल्स गॉट वॉश्ड अवे, स्वात में देख लें, नारायण में देख लें, सो मेनी प्लेसेस. Risk assessment of that area. Follow the natural, you know, sort of the topography of the area. अगर आप पूरा का पूरा पहाड़ काट के वहाँ पे आप एक ऊंची, you know, होटल खड़ा कर देंगे, वो तो that's highly at risk. And that's what we've seen. ये जो स्वात रिवर के इर्द गिर्द हुआ है, it's been happening. कालाम से लेके नीचे मदियन तक. So risk assessment right at the start. Be in sync with nature. Study the nature, look at it, listen to what it's saying. You know, don't cut roads into it. Concrete हम roads बना देते हैं, even within resorts. What happens जब आपकी बारिश होती है, पानी आता है, तो वो permeable तो नहीं है, right? So of course it's going to flood then. So design, like they say, a stitch in time saves nine, right? So you have to give these elements consideration at the design phase. अगर आपका पानी से अब the Offto Resort in Hunza that in Karimabad, the Hosseini one that we're building, it's on the riverside. So you have to look at, and obviously we go through detailed assessments with the EPA, with the GB government, with external consultants. So उसकी construction पीछे से होगी, but we've protected it with the gabion wall. So nature-based solutions को लेके we've put together a gabion wall which will protect the resort and the community next to it. So you have to, you know, bring in these measures. When you go into operation, then the team, whatever the risks are over there, your teams have to be trained, be connected with the local, जैसे rescue 1122 है, या वहाँ पे in northern areas, so you know that there's a big network of volunteers who provide emergency response. You have to be very well connected with the local networks. And that again goes back to being sort of deeply ingrained, embedded in the local social setup. So these are the couple of things that need to be done.
It is quite similar to the circular economy as well. Whenever अगर आपने कुछ recycle करना है, तो उसको पहले से ऐसा product, you design a product that can be recycled. So it all cradle to grave concept. Last question. Again, when we talk about ecotourism, how do you capacitate the larger community? या अगर जैसे कि अगर आपने capacity building करनी हो, एक तो है कि वो by default when they come to your resorts, they have that experience and they learn about that. Are there any ways of actively inculcating those ideas within the guests, within the communities as well?
Within the guests, so like I told you, जो हमारी engagement एक रहती है continuously, signs हैं in the rooms, our teams will engage check-in के time पे, check-out के time पे. Other than that, storytelling.
Achha.
Stories work, stories, so you have to tell them.
Yeah.
And there are beautiful stories within the resort. There's a 100-year-old trail that we've preserved. You can walk down that trail or वो एक mountain में से और उसकी कोई बड़ी खूबसूरत एक folklore है, कोई princess थी who was running away. So it's these things that people want to hear. कुछ trees हैं जिनकी अपनी एक story है, कुछ wildlife है जो आता है हमारे orchards में, birds आते हैं, nesting commune हमने वहाँ पे बनाया, which was you'd be interested to know that it was the idea of a local craftsman. He was a craftsman with a disability, and he worked with the youth and he built those bird houses. And anecdotal evidence, anecdotes are very important. So you see a lot of bird species that had stopped coming to that area, and you can hear them early in the morning and they've come back. So it's this constant engagement with guests. We also give experiences like interact with the local community. So हमने अपनी resort को cut off, लोगों को बाहर नहीं कर दिया community के. It's open for families and children. We have huge orchards. You'll see sometimes school girls coming on a school picnic. They will give them that space. You'll see youth, उनकी कोई activity हो. ख़वातीन ने बहुत दफ़ा हमसे कहा है that we want to have a cultural or our जो craft display होता है here. So we provide those spaces. Now those are all experiences for guests, and that's how they learn to interact, to understand the local community. For the community, we have an internship program. So we bring in youth from वो हमारा एक partnership है with the local organization, with the planning board. So they bring in youth जो कि कुछ शिमशाल वैली से हैं, कुछ upper Hunza से हैं, कुछ lower Hunza से हैं, and they, we bring them in, and we don't just that training. It's a 3-month program. So there's hands-on skills of hospitality. There's classroom lectures, mentoring and coaching, and the most important is it's all on sustainable hospitality and tourism. So how is it different? What are we doing? So wo ingrain karna on DEI, specifically on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's, I think, our contribution. That's what we like to contribute, to give back to the youth of that. Because अगर वो यहाँ पे नहीं है, वो कल को कहीं और जाके they will work, or they'll set up their own businesses. So there'll be something that they'll take away from here.
And this connects us to our previous point as well about changing mindsets. Yeah. Because अगर उसी एज से, छोटी एज से अगर दिमाग में चीज़ डालने लग जाए, इनकलकेट करने लग जाए, highlighting and emphasizing the importance of these things, so eventually later on when they're older, they will create a difference, hopefully.
Yeah, we're hoping something will stay somewhere.
I'm sure it will. Thank you so much, Ms. Amara. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Sonia. And I've learned a lot personally as well about this. It's very heartwarming to see कि पाकिस्तान में इतना अच्छा काम हो रहा है for sustainable tourism. Let's not forget that tourism is a tool for regeneration rather than destruction in this heated world. Thank you so much, watchers, for watching this podcast. We'll be back with another episode.